It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, ends up, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Welcome on in, everyone, to the Full Court Press here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan, streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Excuse me there. Turned down my volume on accident. Now I threw off my groove. Didn't get to the whole thing.
I heard you.
Something about the mobile app, something about the podcast feed. Join us via the Young Power Sports text line, 435-339-0321. It's Jason Walker, Eric Frandsen here with you on a Thursday. Getting through the week here, almost Friday. Week is almost over. But before we get there, there's more Utah State basketball news. Just more Utah State news in general. We've got basketball news. There's track and field. A bunch of different things to get into with the Aggies. There's also rules changes involving men's basketball. They're doing a few things, coaches' challenges. They're talking about a few things, such as the monumental change where we could see men's basketball played in quarters as opposed to halves. Because as far as I know, the only post-high school age league in the world that plays halves is college, NCAA college men's basketball, because the women play quarters. So, but I don't know why. Most of the reason why it's that way still is because nobody's complained about it. But maybe they're complaining about it.
There have been some, but not loud enough or not important enough.
Yeah, so nobody's really seen it as much of a problem, at least among people who make the decisions. But perhaps that will change. We've also got Pick 6 today, and we'll talk about the NBA Finals, an exciting Game 3. The Indiana Pacers taking a surprising lead, perhaps. I know Mike Fulton we talked to yesterday. I'm sure he's thrilled.
Oh, I'm sure he's tickled pink.
Yeah, he's thrilled about the 2-1 lead that his Pacers now have. We talked to him yesterday about the Utah Mammoth, though. You can go back and check our podcast feed to hear us talk to him and hear his thoughts on how the Utah Mammoth are doing this offseason and what they're going to potentially be doing this offseason to prepare for next season. But speaking about next season, let's get back to Utah State basketball. And I believe I have a couple of texts on the Young Power Sports text line. Maybe. I was trying to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got at least one.
We've got two.
We got two, and I'm not sure one of them.
Well, one of them came late after the show last night.
And then another one has to do with our first topic. So let's real quick. Let's get to 9-5. Their text. Oh, we're talking. Maybe it was because of homecoming. I was dissing on homecoming and calling it pointless. 9-5 saying the Ag Day barbecue is one of the most underrated and underutilized events at Utah State University. Not sure why it should be as big as homecoming. Yummy meats and ice cream before home game. What's not to love?
I will admit I have never been to the Ag Day barbecue, but I have heard many who rave about the variety of food that's available there, how good it is, and that it is a really big deal. And I'm just, I'm dumb because I've never gone, but I have heard many people rave about the Ag Day barbecue.
I think this year I need to go and just be a part of some of the tailgating that happens. Because I think the one time I went was kind of around the tailgating, because usually I show up like an hour and a half before the game sometimes, partly because they feed the media. So that's usually my dinner for the day.
There for the food.
There for the food and to be ready. But you can also go around and maybe participate in some of the tailgating. I thought about writing a feature and just getting to know some of the people who tailgate and getting a chance to tell their story. But we'll see. I need to get out there. I'm not the most social creature, so tailgating's not necessarily my scene. But yeah, it's something that Utah State is, I think, underrated at. I used to think they didn't really have a tailgating scene, and then I saw it, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty solid.
There is one.
So
It's certainly nothing like you see in the South or some of our
it's not these
big
crazy
institutions, but
yeah, it's not this massive one where like tens of thousands of people are showing up for tailgating, but it's there and it's nice. But getting a little closer to our initial topic that we were planning on here, 2444. Texting in saying, it's always exciting to see another game revealed on the men's basketball non-conference schedule. I'd be curious to know what the terms of the contract were with Illinois State, whether this neutral site game is part of a package with a return game next season and in close proximity to Illinois State, or if it's a bye game at a neutral site. Yeah, so that's probably the biggest piece of news for the Aggies today, aside from the fact that Logan Hammer became an All-American for like the 5th time. That's also a thing that happened, in case you missed it. But another game, and potentially yet another game, are being reported as either being finalized or being close to being finalized in this game against Illinois State, scheduled for, was it December 13th?
December 13th.
I've got a lot of dates in my head for some of these. And it was Rocco Miller who reported it, who's spot on.
Been pretty good.
Yeah, he's one of those that when he says it, you believe it. So the Aggies will play Illinois State in the Delta Center. That's the report on December 13th. It is interesting that they mentioned the Delta Center because that's something we've known. Like we've known that there's going to be a game in the Delta Center for a while. Jared Calhoun talked about it way back in May when we had a chance to sit down with him and go over a bunch of different things, which included talking about the schedule.
We have to get our work done in the non-league. The 11 games are so important to make sure it carries us, because if you have a down league and down year in league play, it's going to be one less bid, right? So we got to make sure all 11 games make sense. You do got to have 4 or 5 bye games, right? You got to have home games in the spectrum, but you got to get some good neutral site games. We're going to have a game at South Florida, which is on paper a quad 1. We got to add one more true road game. So we're going to have 2 true road games. We're going to try to add a game in Salt Lake, which would be a quad 2. We need it to be a quad 2. And the formula last year was we were 15-0 against quad 3 and quad 4. We had no bad losses. And that really helped us, right? And then, we played 4 quad 1 and quad 2s non-league. We got to do that again. I think the recipe is 4 quad 1, quad 2s, or 5. You got to play between 4 and 5 of those games, whether it's neutral or away. You got to get them in, and then you got to win them. So if you have 11, you got to go 9-2. I would say to feel pretty good about going into league play. And then you got to win 14 or 15. So I think the magic number is probably 24, 25 wins a year at this level. And that's hard to do.
So
it is hard to do.
Yeah, it is hard to do. And so going through some of that, I find it interesting that he mentions the South Florida game. Didn't mention, which there was a report when the Aggies played them last year, and I was trying to dig up that report because I want to make sure I'm not crazy, is that there's a home-and-home series. Utah State played South Florida at home. There will be a return game. Jared Calhoun mentions that South Florida game. I believe the same was said about the Charlotte series, and I thought I saw a report and then clicked away from it, and I need to go back and double check who reported it. But I believe the same was said about Charlotte, where they played a home and home. But Jared Calhoun doesn't mention that game. I don't know if that's just because he skipped over it, but those would potentially be 2 true road games for the Aggies this next season. 2 neutral site games outside of the multi-team event, which is another 2 neutral site games. And then a home non-conference game against Memphis. So, and also we'll note this, Brian Phillips reporting that a game against VCU in Dallas, another neutral site game, is supposedly close to being finalized. So if you include that, that's 7 non-conference games out of the 11 that the Aggies will have this season. If you include Charlotte in that. So you're between 5 and 7 games potentially known by credible reporting.
Does this include the Memphis game?
Yeah, that includes the Memphis game. Because you'd have, if you're including Charlotte and VCU, so you'd have South Florida, Charlotte, Memphis, VCU, Illinois State, and then that's 5. Then you get 2 games at the multi-team event. If VCU ends up falling through, and if Charlotte isn't part of that, you end up with 5. So again, that's between 5 and 7 that are known, depending on reporting and depending on whether things actually get finalized.
They need to get to 11.
And they need to get to 11. So you're looking at another 4 or 6 games, depending on how things are going behind the scenes.
And based on this reporting and some of the stuff that we know, probably a chunk of those remaining would be home games.
Yeah, because he mentions 4 to 5 bye games. That's your home game filler, the Q3, Q4 games. The games against, if you brought in a Utah Tech or Utah Valley, of course, Utah Valley would be like high quad 3, depending on how good of a season they're having. But a Weber State, Southern Utah, or any number of games. Maybe there's some from the Big West that you bring, and the Aggies have done that every few years. Of course, they brought in UC San Diego last year, and that didn't end up being that kind of quad 3, quad 4 filler that maybe they were expecting that to be. So you could have anywhere between no games left to be, no like non-bye games essentially. Like, well, I'm trying to say this. They're trying to stack up a bunch of tough games, but if what we have reported is all happening, then the Aggies will likely add 4 bye games, and this is essentially the meat of your schedule. But I will say it's not too bad, even if it is the case. Now, if they do have a couple more, 1 or 2 more tougher games to add, then that could still be good. But when I went and looked at some of the projections, I wasn't too disappointed with how pretty solid the Aggies' non-conference schedule could end up being. Because you look at, so I know a lot of times we look at last season's net rankings, which can be useful, but a lot of times it's like, there's some times where I'm like, that team is going to be better or that team is going to be worse.
Well, and
because of what we've maybe seen from their offseason.
Yeah, in today's world, there's so much changeover in a roster. It's really hard to apply last year's numbers to what the following year is going to look like.
Yeah. Now, luckily, even in the doldrums of the offseason, there's at least one place where I was able to find at least some kind of projection to make it a little easier than me trying to dive into these, spend like a month figuring out each team to figure out whether or not I think they're going to be higher or lower than last year's net. And that's Bartorvik, or T-Rank, as it's also called. Looked at their projections, which they've got metrics for how good their transfers are, returning production, experience, all of that feeding into their projections. So it gives us an idea. Is it always going to be accurate? No, but it's the best thing we got.
It's a good starting point this time of year.
So he's got South Florida, 62nd, Charlotte, 204th, Illinois State, 95th, VCU, 46th, Memphis, 72, and then you have Boston College, 103, Tulane, 115, and Davidson, 166. Of those last 3, the Aggies will play 2 of them. So, and if you decide to take Bartorvik and kind of paste it on top of the quadrant system and use that instead of the net rankings, you basically end up with 2 quad 1 games, 2 quad 2 games, and then the Charleston Classic games end up as quad 3. No matter who you end up playing. Any one of those 3 would be quad 3. And so that's kind of the non-conference schedule that stacks up right now. And if the Aggies, and keep in mind, only one of these games right now is a home game. So if the Aggies add like 4 home games to play at home at some time before the turn of the calendar, then that would probably end up being a bunch of quad 3, quad 4.
Right. It's most likely.
Yeah. So it's interesting if they maybe decided to try and pull out of that Charlotte game, because again, he didn't mention it in the audio. Maybe it just slipped his mind. But if they pulled out of that, then they may end up wanting to look for another quad 1 game. Because as Jared Calhoun mentions, he wants to have 4 or 5 quad 1 or quad 2 games or something like that. Did he say 4 quad 1 specifically? I can't remember if that's what I literally listened to the audio 5 minutes ago and I
don't remember if he said that.
Because they'd have 4 games of quad 1, quad 2. They'd have 2 of each. But could they add another quad 1 game or quad 2, depending? Obviously, you're guessing at this point how good your opponent is going to be. But getting out of playing Charlotte on the road, which I think is quad 3? Oh, did I? I don't know if I think I might have excluded Charlotte in my calculations there. As far as how many quad 1, quad 2, and quad 3 games you have, but they're 204 in the Bartorvik projections, which I think is quad 3, even on the road.
Yeah. It'd be, that's probably more of your low quad 3.
Yeah. So the strength of schedule is looking solid. You play two teams that are very well-known mid-major brands, VCU and Memphis. You play a pretty solid South Florida team. And you do have some filler down there. I mean, of course, Illinois State, they're a team that just had a 22-win season. They're on the up and up. They've got a head coach going into his fourth season who's pulled that team from winning 7 or 10 games a year. He got them winning 22 games last year over there in the Missouri Valley. So I'm liking where the strength of schedule is going. It's not top tier for a mid-major, but I think it's trending better and better than what we've seen. I need to go back and double check to see like just how it compares, but it does feel like it's getting better and better. Because where they in the past, and again we've talked about this over and over. In the past, they've played decent mid-major teams to the point where the metrics like the Aggies.
Yes,
but a lot of that eye test and human element, which unfortunately plays a large factor in the selection committee, they didn't necessarily have that. But now they're trending more toward, that eye test sort of metric of the strength of schedule.
Yeah, and obviously the schedule still needs to be finalized with a few more teams in there, which are probably going to be on the lower end. But when you look at this, there are some games on here that I really like. If they do get VCU, I really like that. Memphis, looks like that's happening. Illinois State, down in at Delta Center.
It kind of depends on like how good they are, because if they repeat what they did last year, that's a quad 2 game. Just straight up.
And it's what he said they wanted. They wanted to have a quad 2 game in Salt Lake as a neutral site game. And look, that name maybe not resonates with a lot of people, but
I'll be honest, I confused them with Indiana State at first.
But I like that Utah State is having semi-regular games at Delta Center for multiple reasons. It gives players an opportunity to play in an NBA gym. But more than that, there are a lot of Wasatch Front Aggies who can't make it up to watch very many games. And it's easy for them to get to. And for fans up here, give them an excuse to get down to Salt Lake to Spectrum on wheels and all that. If it's just that standalone game, Utah State versus Illinois State, I don't know how full that arena is going to be, but or I don't even know what the costs are to have a game there. But I like that they're trying to bring games to other pockets of where the fan base is. I would love to have seen, if you're going to play a game at Delta Center in Salt Lake, it would have been nice to see a higher profile team be there to draw a bigger crowd. Because I don't know that Illinois State is really going to move the needle.
Yeah, and it's similar in a lot of ways to when they played San Francisco at the Delta Center. And of course, in that case, this 2-4-4-4, wondering if the Aggies going to do something similar with how they did this with San Francisco, where they played at what's the name of the arena where the Warriors play?
Oh, Chase Center?
At Chase Center. And then they came back and played at the Delta Center. So I don't know if they're going to do something like that. Who's the closest NBA team to Illinois State? Is it the Bulls?
Probably the Bulls.
I would assume. Depending on where they're at in Illinois, I know they can be surprisingly close to other states, depending on where you're at in Illinois. But
they're in Normal, Illinois. I got to figure out where Normal, Illinois is.
Well, that's odd. It's a knee slapper. Yeah, surprisingly enough, I think I've heard of that town before. But yeah, it's possible I could be doing something like that, but that's not in the reporting. I don't know if it was super widely reported about the neutral that the Aggies did with the Dons. Isn't there San Francisco? Are they the Dons? Or am I confusing them with Spanish Fork? No,
I think San Francisco. I think they are the Dons.
I have to double check that because Spanish Fork are the Dons, and now I don't know if San Francisco is as well.
Yeah, San Francisco Dons.
Okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. And by the way, Normal is about equidistant between Chicago and Indianapolis.
So, like, if they did something like that,
a little bit closer to Chicago.
If they did something like that, they'd either be at Gainbridge, which I've already been there, or they'd be at Chicago. I think I've been in their airport. That's about it. So we'll see how that winds up. But yeah, the non-conference schedule coming together a little bit more, and I think the more reports we see, I think the happier fans are. I think the one disappointment, I think fans are kind of hoping they'll get into a better multi-team event, because at this point, the weakest part of their schedule is their multi-team event. Setting aside, home games that you're always going to have. So it feels like to me, the way they're setting up the non-multi-team event and, non-bye games at home, basically the part of the schedule that, your neutral site games, your potential true road games, that portion of the schedule is what's being improved with Utah State. They're getting tougher games in that sense. You only went and played St. Mary's last year. They played a true road game at St. Mary's. They're going to play a neutral site game against a solid Illinois State team. They're playing a home game against Memphis. They're potentially playing a neutral site game against VCU. They're getting it to be tougher and tougher. And again, they're going to play at South Florida. So they're getting that portion tougher and tougher. I think the next step really is figuring out a way to get that multi-team event where instead of quad 3 games, you're playing quad 2, maybe even quad 1. So baby steps.
Yeah, and Utah State has to still build a resume to impress in the second weekend of March. And you can always hope that the Mountain West is going to be solid, going to be some fairly decent teams in conference play. But we've seen it can vary from 3 teams to 6 teams that end up getting invites to the NCAA tournament. And you want to make sure you're one of those teams. And so you have to put together a resume that will impress, but you also have to have wins. Wins matter. And so you have to stack wins. You want to come into conference play with some momentum. You want to be able to test your guys before you get into conference play, because there will be good teams. There are good coaches. There are good players. So they have to be tested, but they also have to have some level of momentum on their side. So it's kind of an interesting balancing act that coaches do when putting schedules together. How hard do we test our guys? How hard do we push them at risk of maybe losing a few games in the non-conference, but does that help prepare us for the conference schedule? Or if we think the conference schedule is going to be brutal, then we need to try to ensure that we get some wins, because it might be harder to come by in conference play.
Depends on which risk do you want to take. Do you want to risk getting beat up in non-conference with the potential reward of maybe you get beat up in non-conference, but then you play better in conference play because you tested yourself? But you could also lose in the non-conference and then maybe be too far behind to end up in the NCAA tournament. Colorado State almost did that to themselves. They didn't go out there and win the Mountain West tournament. They don't get into the tournament.
True.
Because they struggled in non-conference. Or you could have the problem that, sometimes Boise State would face, where they do good in the non-conference and then they flop in conference play or toward the end of conference play.
Gas.
Yeah. So there's some different risks that you can run, and your strength of schedule can be part of that. Or you could be like San Diego State, where they've had years where they play well in a tough non-conference, then they play really well in conference play, and they get themselves like a 4 or 5 seed, which that's the goal they're trying to get, is have a good non-conference, play well in a good conference slate, and get the best of both worlds. But you can't always plan to get the best of both worlds, because I think it was Napoleon that said no good plan survives contact with the enemy. So,
ooh, look at that.
Yeah, getting all historical on here.
But look, I mean, at the end of the day, you just try to go out and schedule best, because you don't know necessarily how teams might end up looking. So it may look like, hey, this is a great schedule, great thing that we put on the schedule, but that team turned out to be a dud. Their transfers didn't work well. New coach trying to figure things out, whatever. Or it could be completely opposite. We thought this would be maybe a quad 3, but gosh, look what they've done. I mean, that was what San Diego happened with them last year. So coaches just try to go out there and schedule the best that they can based on their model of what they believe will work for them. And then just go and hope for the best. And where there are a number of new faces for Utah State, they're going to need some games as kind of an on-ramp to get ready for the season. But with some of these kind of pseudo announcements that we're hearing within the last 24 hours, I really like the direction that Utah State's headed with their non-conference scheduling so far.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a solid non-conference schedule, all things said and done. We got to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to keep talking college basketball. We're going to talk about the rules going to break out the rule book, or really the rules that are being changed as college basketball is trying to address the flow of the game that they feel is being disrupted. So we'll talk about that next here on the Full Court Press.
When grid failures and severe weather cause power outages, your business might take a hit, or at home, you could lose your refrigerated food storage. Generac Standby Power Solutions help ensure an uninterrupted power supply. Generac is the #1 brand of standby generators. Get yours today from Golden Spike Electric, your trusted source for safety and security. Golden Spike Electric, powering your peace of mind. Online at gsegenerators.com or call 257-3016. They also service other models.
No matter what the conditions, DD Auto and Salvage can get your vehicle up and off your property. Now is the time to plan to make extra cash by calling DD Auto and Salvage and moving that old vehicle. Let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it so easy to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. If you have metal, DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204. That's 787-1204 today. See store for details.
The t-shirt. It's the unofficial clothing of summer. We all have a favorite t-shirt. The Logo Shop has custom screen printed over 1 million t-shirts for teams, clubs, businesses, family reunions, fundraisers, marathons, bike races. One-of-a-kind designs with creative graphics, even funny phrases. Whether you need a couple dozen or a couple thousand, the team at the Logo Shop will help with your one-of-a-kind design. From concept to creation. Order your custom t-shirts from the Logo Shop.
The Logo Shop. The Logo Stop. The Logo Shop.
Do you have a fireplace or stove that isn't working right? Why wait until next winter to get it fixed? Get ahead of the game and get your fireplace or stove serviced now by Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They service everything from Quadra-Fire pellet stoves to heat and glow fireplaces. Get a 20% discount on your next service and labor when you mention this ad. Call 752-7272 or go to advancedfireplaceandstove.com. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, where comfort is their business.
Copiers, printers, service, and supplies are just the beginning. Les Olson IT is the premier source for your business's structured cabling, IT, software, telephones, and security systems. We partner with you to find the ideal solution to all of your office technology needs. Tell us your goals and we'll get you there. Find out more at lesolson.com.
Les Olson IT.
This is Catherine Buse with Cache Valley Bank, and we understand that concerns about fraud can weigh heavily on you. Your peace of mind is important to us. That's why we're committed to looking out for you and your family. Our team keeps a vigilant eye on your account. If you ever have concerns or need support, we're just a call or visit away. Whether you need advice or just someone to talk to, our friendly staff is ready to help. We're more than just a bank. We're your neighbors, and we care about your security. Visit your local branch today. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Interviews, analysis, and a little bit of fun mixed in. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Young Power Sports of Logan has a brand new service center that can handle any make, any model 100% of the time. The trained technicians know Can-Am, Kawasaki, KTM, Polaris, Sea-Doo, and more inside and out. They can work with any brand, any model. Young Power Sports of Logan has the tools and experience to keep your ride in peak condition. Google Young Power Sports of Logan for Cache Valley's premier power sports service department. They also sponsor our Full Court Press text line. So, and we didn't have any new texts, did we?
Nope.
Oh, I just accidentally exited out.
Nope. Yep. No new texts.
So, all right. Let's get to our next topic here. Some rules changes in college basketball. A couple of changes to the challenge system, among other things.
Yeah, some rules have been approved, and they're discussing a few other things. But the biggest is that a coach's challenge has been approved, and it's much like what you see in the NBA. But you have to have a timeout available to you before you can initiate a challenge. But coaches can challenge out of bounds plays, basket interference or goaltending, and whether a secondary defender was in the restricted area arc. That's what coaches can challenge. Now, so you have to have a timeout available to you. If you request a challenge and it's successful, then you can challenge again later on in the game. If your challenge is not successful, a timeout is removed from you.
And you don't get another challenge. So
very similar to what is done in the NBA. Now, officials, they can do reviews on their own for goaltending or restricted arc plays in the final 2 minutes of games. They can also initiate it themselves on out-of-bounds reviews. Out-of-bounds reviews can now be initiated only by a coach's challenge.
Yes, that's one of the biggest things is like the game could get really slowed down if they have an out-of-bounds call. And if it's remotely close, the officials are like, all right, let's go spend 10 minutes looking at a call that really only needs one look at it. But yeah, they basically only get a couple of things now they can initiate on themselves or by themselves, the officials by themselves, which basically amounts to like basket interference and then like whether it was a 2 or a 3-pointer.
Right. Scoring. Checking the score and the time. If the timing was off, they need to check the clock, things like that. They also approved a change with flagrant fouls if there is contact with the groin.
So they added nut shots to flagrant fouls?
Yes. Well, it has been, but if it was anything there, it was a flagrant 2, you're rejected. But what they've done now is they have the option to call flagrant 1. So as opposed to they could call it like a common foul. Before they could only call a common foul or a flagrant foul 2. Now they have the option of calling a flagrant 1 foul. So free throws in possession, but that player doesn't get ejected.
Yeah. So very important things.
Yes.
Basically, because
so if it's incidental, you still made contact, you should be a little bit more in control, but it wasn't like intentional, then does that player really need to be ejected? So there's some, I guess, discretion there by officials to look at that.
And officials tend to be like, what's the term? That impact averse. They don't want to have that much of an impact, so they tend not to elevate something to an ejection very often. Unless you're in baseball, then they eject you at the drop of a literal drop of a hat. They'll eject you over the tiniest thing. They'll eject you over tapping your helmet, which is now perceived as an insult, which there's a good reason why it is. But yeah. But now with basketball, giving yourselves a little more leeway to have a middle ground, essentially, which is weird that they would only have something that's common foul or ejection. That's kind of an extreme.
Yeah, it is. The other thing, so those are approved. The other thing that they're looking at and they're open to looking at and exploring is changing from halves to quarters. And this is what surprises me. Like, I have heard this, that they were open to looking at this for years. Because the idea was they started to change like the NIT for an experiment. So we have data so we can see how it works. In the NIT, we'll do quarters. So we can kind of see how it works. And then that went nowhere. And then to get data, see how it works, we'll change the women's game to quarters. And then the men's game will be right behind.
Isn't that just insulting, though?
Well, how long have they been doing quarters in the women's game?
Wouldn't it be insulting? Like, is that like why they changed women's game? Like, because if that's why, that's insulting to the women's game. Like, you're an experimental ground.
I don't think it's necessarily to be a petri dish, but I think it was like, we know that this needs to happen. You guys, maybe it is a little bit insulting to some degree. Like, you can change it. It's not going to have that much impact because we don't have that many TV games and that many TV partners. But they've been really slow to do it for the men's game in college, which is so dumb, in my opinion. It is the only level of basketball at just about anywhere you go that it operates in halves instead of quarters. When kids learn, when they're playing in high school, when you go to the NBA, when you're in FIBA, you go anywhere and it's in quarters. But no, in college basketball, we must protect halves.
Yeah, and really at this point, I think you're protecting the TV timeout. Because if you go to quarters, that removes, I think, essentially one time where you'd have an automatic TV timeout. Because in the women's game, they do a break at the 5-minute mark of 10-minute quarters. So you go 5 minutes in the first, end of the first quarter. That'd essentially be a second TV timeout. 5 minutes in the second. But the next break is in halftime, which is already, it's already a break. So you'd be missed. So instead of 4 TV timeouts like they do in the current system, 16, 12, 8, and 4, you end up with 3. That, to me, I think is the only roadblock. But to be honest, if we get rid of a TV timeout, I don't think anyone would whine, except for the TV executives, except they already take regular timeouts, stoppages in play, and turn them into commercial breaks.
Right. Yes, they do. So that's why their TV finds a way to take the breaks it needs to take. And those breaks, they get slid in there, and the way they can do things now to slide in messages during free throws. You see in the professional game, they superimpose stuff on the court. There are lots of ways to get messages across now more than ever. And I'm sure they're pushing technology that's going to even make it more advanced in the future. So for the sake of the game itself, let's just make it consistent from when you're kids to when you're pros, everything in the middle. Just do it quarters. That's how everybody does it. U.S. men's college basketball stands alone in this, and it's silly in my mind.
Yeah, and I think, so in addition to potential for losing a TV timeout, I think the main reason it wouldn't have happened yet is because I don't think, so the coaches tend to be where changes happen. If enough coaches are whining about it, it gets changed. It happens. Like the whole thing with NIL and transfers and poaching, like things are moving toward trying to fix that because coaches are getting mad about it.
Right. Eventually enough coaches spoke up.
Yeah. And I don't think, at least from my impression, coaches are really all that bothered by 20-minute halves. Because the one way they'd be bothered is if their players aren't getting enough rest. But they get 4 built-in timeouts that they don't have to call, to the point where guys can play 40 minutes in a game fairly regularly, and it won't really hurt them that much.
You have opportunities to play up to the end of a clock situation more times in quarters than you do in halves. You have more times to reset your team and collect what you want to do, because you have these automatic quarter breaks. So it makes the game more interesting and more compelling. Sometimes these halves, they can drag on, and you kind of lose sight of what's actually going on in the game and where you're at in the game, because it just goes on forever before you have those breaks.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like it takes forever, but you do have those scheduled breaks. Like I think the coaches either don't see any potential, or maybe they're missing, maybe there is potential for quarters to be better.
And if you already have those breaks, just call them quarter breaks.
Yeah. But like I said, there's fewer of them.
Yeah.
There would be fewer built-in breaks with quarters than we currently have. Now, one of them might be longer, and maybe that's where you can fill things. Say, hey, your 5-minute, those 5-minute marks are maybe a little shorter, but like the quarter break can be longer.
Right.
Maybe. More commercials and more time for guys to rest for a second.
Yeah, the length of your timeout this time is going to be a little bit longer than that timeout you take the other time.
Yeah, so maybe that's a substitution. You take the time lost from a fourth TV timeout and you plug it into the quarter break. I don't know if fans or coaches would particularly care, but I don't know. It's just a weird situation. We got here, and now that this is the system we have, it takes a lot of people complaining to change it. And not too many people have. I know Eric, you certainly don't like it. Of course, I don't like it either. I think it's kind of dumb, but I also don't care that much. And since nobody really cares that much, it hasn't changed.
Well, yeah,
but it may change now. We'll see.
Yeah, there's plenty of evidence to look at what's going on with the women's game. You can look at ample evidence of what goes on in the professional game. You can look at what happens at the high school level. There's a lot of things to look at for the game itself. TV partners, they will figure it out.
All right, we got to take another break. We'll talk about basketball a little bit more. We're going to move up the ladder, though, and talk about the NBA. Game 3 of the NBA Finals was last night. Fun game between the Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll talk about our thoughts on the series next here on the Full Court Press.
This is Lydia from the Sportsman on Main Street, wishing all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day. At the Sportsman, we have great gifts. Shirts and shorts from Cool and Viore, shoes from brands you love, such as Keen, Olakai, Bourne, and Chaco. We also have, right out of London, a variety of soaps and colognes from TrueFit and Hill. If you're tired of seeing your husband's thread-worn wallet, we also have slim fit metal wallets from Secret with an RFID blocker. So come on down to the Sportsman on Main Street for all of your Father's Day treasures.
Markets are unpredictable, but reaching your financial goals shouldn't be. Adams Wealth Advisors is dedicated to helping you navigate these challenges and ensure you're prepared for every outcome. Whether your financial plan revolves around advanced tax planning, estate planning, business strategies, retirement planning, or investment management, Adams Wealth Advisors team of CPAs, CFPs, and CFAs will provide the expertise needed to help you reach your financial goals. Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com. That's AdamsWealthAdvisors.com for more information or to schedule an appointment.
Need a reliable partner for your medical needs? Look no further than Triton Medical and Transportation. We offer top quality medical soft goods right here in your community. From incontinence supplies and oxygen needs to medical transportation. Whatever you need to stay comfortable and healthy, we've got you covered. Trust Triton Medical and Transportation, caring for our community with every step, every mile. Call us today at 435-557-6687 or visit us online at mytritonsupply.com. Triton Medical and Transportation, because your health matters.
We all know moms rule the world, but dads are important too. Do something special for Dad this Father's Day. Pick him out a watch to fit his personality from Jerix. We feature watches by Citizen, Bulova. Or if Dad's into firearms, you have to check out our newest line of precision Glock watches. Or maybe your dad would like a tie bar, chain, bracelet, or how about a special ring with your name engraved on the inside? Let Dad know how special he is.
Jerix Fine Jewelry. Make it special. Make it Jerix.
At Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning, Feel the Love is more than just heating and cooling. It means giving back. 5 complete HVAC systems will be donated to a deserving person or family. Feel the love and nominate that person or family in need at mtnvalleyhvac.com. Nominate prior to September 1st, 2025. See website for all details.
Hi, this is Robbie with LSS Insurance. If you're about to turn 65, the Medicare phone calls, mailers, and emails can be unreal. Out-of-market telemarketers simply do not understand Utah, Idaho, or your individual situation. We have real answers and real solutions with local help. At LSS Insurance, we are your health insurance specialists. Call us 752-9493. Having local help makes all the difference, and there's no cost to you. Call 752-9493 or visit lssins.com.
It's the Full Court Press, weekday afternoons from 4 to 6 on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning wants you to feel the love as they give away and install 5 new furnace and air conditioners to families in need. Mountain Valley Heating and AC and Air is donating HVAC systems, equipment, materials, and installation services to help deserving families who need a little extra support, and they need your help. Nominate a family in need today. The nominations are open, and they run through August 31st. At least 5 families will be selected between September and October after the nominations are closed. Nominate a family by going to mtnvalleyhvac.com. That's MTN, basically the abbreviation for mountain, valleyhvac.com, and click the Feel the Love tab. And that's mountainvalleyhvac.com. So the NBA Finals continue. It seems like forever and a day between each game. After having NBA basically every day, NBA and or hockey every day for like 3 weeks, now it feels like there's forever between each game. Yeah. We had one yesterday.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty solid one.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably the first game that I felt like was a real game. Because game 1, Oklahoma City was in control until the final
until suddenly
minutes.
They weren't.
Yeah. When Indiana really started to make it a game in the final 5 minutes. Game 2 was a blowout. It was Oklahoma City all the way. But last night felt like this was a back and forth, bona fide NBA championship finals game, because it was Indiana up by 2, Oklahoma City up by 4, and swinging back and forth until the final few minutes when Indiana just separated and they were able to hold on and just to keep that distance a little bit.
Yeah, well, it really was back and forth, because look at Oklahoma City outscoring Indiana by 8 in the first quarter. Then it was Indiana plus 12 in the second, Oklahoma plus 9 in the third, and then Indiana ran away with it kind of at the end of the fourth quarter, as you mentioned. So, yeah, back and forth, turns, changes of momentum. And mind you, that's not the only way a game can be good, because obviously game one was pretty exciting. But like within the last couple of minutes, Oklahoma City was still kind of within punching distance. And given what we saw in game one, I know it was kind of historic that the Pacers came back from down like 9 in the final 3 minutes when Oklahoma City was only down like 6 or 7 with 2 minutes left. I was like, this game ain't over. Normally you kind of like, oh, you're down 7 with 2 minutes. Yeah, you're not going to win. But given the way the NBA is now, it's like, who knows? They might, hit a couple of threes, get a couple of stops, and suddenly it's a game, much like what Indiana did in game one.
Ratings results show the numbers are still down 20% compared to last year. Just too bad, because last night was fun. It was a good basketball game. Indiana was aggressive. They kind of flipped the script. Like they gave out a dose of Oklahoma City's own medicine. Like they were aggressive, creating turnovers, blocking shots, things that were normally the calling card for the Thunder, and they struggled to adjust to that. Oklahoma City isn't quite near as effective on the road as they are at home, but still, this is interesting to watch kind of the changes, the nuance in how the coaching changes, the players who step up and play larger roles in these different moments in these finals. And that's, to me, what makes it fun. Yeah, you want to see the stars. You want to see them shine bright. But part of the appeal, too, is like, who's going to be that different X factor tonight? And last night it was, T.J. McConnell and Miles Turner had moments. I think there were a variety of different guys who Mathurin had some really big moments. So what's kind of fun about these finals is just seeing who is it going to be tonight that's going to step up and play a large role.
Yeah, and I you mentioned these guys that are kind of not necessarily the stars, but guys that are stepping up. Those are the guys that I keep ranting and raving about how they're the ones who win you an NBA Finals. You'll have your star. Tyrese Halliburton's your star for the Pacers. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's your star for the Thunder. But it's those other guys that are making things dominant for you. Heck, it was Chet Holmgren, and maybe he counts as a star because he's been one of their best players, but he had a dominant first quarter. I was checking the score, checking the box score at the end of the first quarter and seeing that Holmgren had like 13 points in one quarter. And I was like, dang, he's being a monster out there. And it's finding all these different guys to step up and play team basketball. And that's what can make these series really fun, is seeing that team basketball. But unfortunately, that's also the thing that's driving the ratings down, because it's not super team basketball. It's just team basketball.
Right. We have good players. We don't have superstar players.
Yeah.
That people that are appointment watching, right? That they're going to set their appointment. Oh, I want to see what this player does tonight. How will he respond? And just they're good players, but they're just not known nationally to the same level.
Yeah. And hopefully all these players are going to get known. Like guys like Jalen Williams and Miles Turner, they deserve to be known for what they're doing. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Of course, Shai just won an MVP, so clearly people know who he is at this point. So whether or not people end up watching, I know we keep ranting about that, but whether or not people keep watching, I think those who enjoy basketball are going to enjoy watching this series and have enjoyed watching this series.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pascal Siakam, he was part of a championship-winning team in Toronto. He played a large role for them, and he's been a good player, but he's just not one of those that's like a big media star. You see him in a lot of endorsements, and you see him outside of the game, but he's a really good player. But he doesn't go out and make noise for himself. But he's fun to watch when he's watching the game. He just doesn't really bring a lot of attention outside of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, but hey, if you're a fan of basketball, that's maybe one of the issues of the NBA is there's too many people who focus more on the off-the-court stuff in the NBA, and they like that more than they like what happens on the court.
And you know what? Ratings thing, it's become a bit of a talking point for some people, but
like us,
the NBA got its media deal. It is done. It is signed. So Adam Silver doesn't really, I mean, yes, he cares, but
because you always got to look to the next media deal.
Not to the same level as perhaps when this was up for renewal. So let's not take a dump on the ratings being bad because these aren't two large market teams that are void of large market talent, because this is really good basketball, but the facts are there that people just aren't tuning in to the same level.
Yeah. All right, we got to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to have pick 6. I've been on a roll. We'll see if Eric can stop me. So
This is the week.
We'll look at that next here on the Full Court Press.
Rely now on a York Affinity Premium Comfort System to keep your home cool and comfortable. The new Affinity systems are smarter and more connected and more efficient than ever before. And you can cut your energy costs by as much as 50%. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning, your local York dealer, to schedule a free system evaluation. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning showroom is west of DI and online at advancedheating-ac.com.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air. Express Tire, tires for less. In and out with zero stress. Express Tire, tires for less. In and out with zero stress.
Nationwide warranty on all new tires.
Honey, the garage door won't close again. It's the sun hitting the sensors. I just fixed this.
Toilet paper rolls are not a fix. Is there something we can do?
Actually, yeah. Advanced Garage Door has these new sunshades that block direct light from the garage door sensors. Let me give Mason a call.
Is your garage door not closing? We can fix that. Call Advanced Garage Door at 435-255-6725. That's 435-255-6725. Or visit us at advancedgaragedoors.com.
June is the month of Speed Queen. This is Jay with Daryl's Appliance. Our farmer-tested and approved Speed Queen washer is built tough and has a 5-year warranty. Come see why everyone is trading in their front-load washers for these best sellers. Why Daryl's? We have the best price guaranteed and always backed by Daryl's service and warranty team. Have a warranty repair? No problem. When you buy it from Daryl's, we've got you covered. Don't forget to ask about our exclusive rebates. Daryl's, west on Airport Road, open until 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
The patio is open. The chips are endless. Drinks on tap. You know it's got to be Cafe Sabor, Cache Valley's best Mexican restaurant, gold winner in the Best of Northern Utah contest. Experience Locals Day every Thursday with a huge burrito, endless chips and soda, only $7.95. That's a complete lunch for just $7.95. Finding any lunch under $10 is nearly impossible. Every Thursday, drinks, chips, and massive burrito, just $7.95. The patio, the sun, the fun at Cafe Sabor in the historic train station on 6th Weston Center in Logan.
This is Jordan with Primrose Home Care and Hospice. As I visit with people on a regular basis, I see many things we can help with. Recent falls, balance training, knee, shoulder, and hip surgeries, memory loss, housekeeping, help with medications, and that's not all. We at Primrose offer the best care in any situation. A great example of this is our preventative care program. While working with your doctor and using our personal approach, we can help prevent many of these situations. For more explanation, visit primrosecare.com or call me at 787-1369. Primrose Home Care and Hospice. We're your home team.
Breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews. It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
The weather is getting hotter and hotter, and Napa has what you need to be prepared for that weather. Napa Legend and Napa AAA batteries are available. Get a $25 rebate on Bosch lithium-ion batteries. I'll even test yours to make sure it needs to be replaced. Fuel treatments from Standine, Halves, and Seafoam, they're on sale for $8.49 a can. Mention this ad, and you can get Napa 15W Premium Diesel Oil for just $11.99 a gallon, cash and carry only. And you can find all that and more at your local Napa Auto Parts from Preston to Providence. All right, Eric, we got to go quickly here. Let's do pick 6. I'm on a roll, and I'm going to let you start first.
Okay, Max Fried strikeouts for the Yankees against Boston on Sunday, 4.5.
Under.
I'll take the over. COC Mariner yards for the Panthers in the versus the Defenders in the UFL Championship game on Saturday, 25.5.
I'm going to go over.
I'll take the under. And an F1 is in Montreal, Canada this weekend. Max Verstappen finishes 2.5.
I'll say under. So he'll finish better than...
Better? I will take the over.
All right. Okay, I've got also a racing one. 24 Hours of Le Mans is this weekend.
Oh, that's right.
And Cadillac, they got the pole position. And they're looking pretty fast. Highest finish of their 4 cars, over under 3.5.
I'll take the under.
I'm going to take the under as well. Jalen Williams combined points and rebounds in Game 4 of the NBA Finals at the over-under at 27.5.
Ooh. I'll take the over.
I'm going to take the under. And then U.S. Open players who will finish under par for the 4 rounds combined. I think there's 14 right now, but it can get harder over the weekend. So I set the line at 11.5.
So if I take the under,
that means there would be less players.
I'm going to take the under.
All right. I'm going to take the over. I don't quite have time to do our tiebreaker on the air because we got to finish things here on the Full Court Press. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you all tomorrow here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. Talent can take you far in the NBA, but it won't take you past self-inflicted wounds. OKC might be the most gifted team in recent memory, but last night in Game 3, they looked like their own worst enemy. 19 turnovers. They were outscored by 14 in the fourth quarter. And now OKC is trailing in a series with Indiana, capturing all the momentum. Give the Pacers credit. They're well-coached, poised, resilient, and they didn't beat Oklahoma City by outgunning them. They beat them by letting the Thunder trip over themselves. Bad passes, poor execution, rushed shots, all in the moments that mattered the most. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams are stars. Chet Holmgren's a unicorn. Head coach Mark Daigneault has pressed the right buttons all year, but raw talent only takes you so far. Execution wins titles. The good news is there's still time, but against a team like Indiana, sharp, structured, fearless, that clock is ticking, maybe a little bit faster. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.